back to another edition of Ingleside Imaginarium's Myths and Stitches. This is a channel about my own cross-stitch design company called Ingleside Imaginarium. I design and sell electronic copies of my original cross-stitch patterns, mostly having to do with mythological and fantasy creatures or other types of creatures. It's a lot of animals. I like designing animals best. But in this type of video, I talk about the new pattern I released this year called the Keramos Bestiary. It is a mystery stitch along, which means that when you join, you get a new piece of the pattern every month, and if you stitch along monthly by the end of the year or a little into the next year, since we started late this year, you're going to have a completed piece with, in this case, 12 different beasts from Greek mythology in an amphora on your own Greek urn, a Grecian urn. And in this case, in these videos, I talk specifically about the newest creature and do a little stitch with me type video where you can see me stitching and working on the creature as well as discussing them. But for the first thing that I need to do is I need to show you the newest creature, and it is right here. So this is the newest creature that was released June 1st, and technically it was released a little early. I'm filming this on May 30th, the day before Memorial Day here in the United States, as well as, I guess tomorrow is a bank holiday for those in the UK as well. So I decided I'd release the Griffon. That's who we have here. I'd release the Griffon early so that you stitchers would have something fun to stitch on tomorrow. So as I mentioned, the newest creature is the Griffon, and you can see here we have the first 3 months, and the Griffon is here, the first creature in our second band on our Grecian urn. And so yeah, here is the Griffon. I'm gonna try and get a little bit of a close-up on it for you. So yeah, and then the whole piece. I don't have much to add besides that, as far as specific updates that are relevant to this pattern. The next creature will come out on July 1st. Another creature here in the second row. We're just making our way down the amphora, and yeah, other than that, I want to just say thank you guys for your support with my original designs. I'm slowly getting enough ready and releasing enough that there should be another What's New at the Imaginarium video that is not a Myths and Stitches video. Hopefully out sometime soon, but I have a couple of kind of I'm still working to get some things that are nearly ready to release for you guys. So if you have any questions or concerns, feel free to leave a comment here on this video. Otherwise, I will see you guys in a month, and I hope that you enjoy talking about the Griffon.
Hi there everybody. If you are watching this, that means you just saw the reveal of June's creature in the Keramos Bestiary, and that is the Griffon. A fun fact about this guy is he's actually the first one I designed with this project in mind, just to see if I could replicate the style. And actually I had wanted to do a griffin-headed amphora because there are these really cool ancient Greek pottery pieces, which are jugs with animal heads kind of as spouts, where as you would pour, the water would come from the animal heads. But that ended up being too big a surface area for a design for a mystery stitch along. I always try to keep size and accessibility as far as budget goes for my customers. And in order to get the detail I wanted on the creatures, I had to cut that and just make it into a regular amphora. So this Griffon is the remnants of that first design, and he's going to be pretty cool when we're done with him. I mean, you guys have already seen him. He's pretty cool. So here I will get started. I've just started my thread up here in his ears, and I'm going to continue stitching while I tell you guys a little bit about the Griffin. So while the Griffin is a creature that is featured commonly in ancient Greek art, it's actually not really found a lot in ancient Greek mythology. There isn't a specific myth that was originated in Greece, in ancient Greece, that features the Griffin. However, the Griffin was thought to be a real animal, and hence it was put into the art of the ancient Greeks. And now, of course, we know it is a mythical creature, because we have not found real griffins in the world, even though back then they imagined that they thought that they were real. And stories of griffins for the ancient Greeks originated with a neighboring culture called the Scythians, which were a culture that was north of Greece, a nomadic culture that was known for their horse riding capabilities, and according to the Greeks, their barbaric practices. So the Scythians actually told the Greeks, or stories kind of filtered through, of a neighboring culture of theirs called the Arimaspians, who lived in a mountain range even more north than them, between Hyperborea, which is northeast Europe, according to the ancient Greeks, and where the Scythians lived. And according to the Scythians, the Arimaspians, for some reason I just had to double check I was saying that right. The Arimaspians were a race of one-eyed humans that rode horses as well, that were known for their horseback capabilities. The other big thing they were known for, besides being naturally born with one eye, is that they had a feud going on with a beast that lived in their mountains. And that beast was described as being part lion and part eagle. Specifically, the limbs and the back half of the creature were those of a lion, and then the front half, and mostly the head and the breast, and the wings, of course, were of an eagle. And that these creatures were very fierce, and the most exciting thing, I guess, probably for ancient cultures, was the idea that where there were griffins, there was gold. And of course, gold has, I think, generally been known in human history as a precious metal. And, well, at least in Western civilization. And so the Arimaspians would fight these huge battles, would go out hunting through the mountains and fight these battles with the griffins for the gold that the griffins would hoard. And that's really the first mention of griffins in Greek mythology, or in Greek history, I guess we can say, since they thought that these were real creatures. And what's interesting about that is that Greek mythology and Greek artwork, Greek culture, is not the only place that we see griffins and griffin-like creatures. They're actually portrayed in Islamic art, and Arabic art, and kind of South Asian, if you would, I guess, Southwest Asian art, before they were featured in ancient Greek art. And that includes Hebrew. There's a Hebrew creature called Ziz that actually looks a lot like a griffin. And the interesting thing about kind of the Islamic origins of these creatures in artwork is that the Scythians, who passed on this story to the Greeks about these griffins, these lion and eagle creatures that were found in the mountains, are actually thought to have been, they disappeared, by the way. We don't have a Scythian culture anymore. Supposedly the land that they occupied was in Kurdistan. But it is thought that the people who became the Scythians were from Iran. So that makes sense to me, at least, as someone who's not an expert in this. And of course, I'm paraphrasing a whole bunch of stuff that I read on the internet. And I wanted to give a bunch of kind of extra information to you guys about the Griffin, researching kind of it's because there isn't a real story to be told about the Griffin from ancient Greek mythology. I wanted to be able to tell you some other information. So that's why we're kind of going into these different cultures and the idea of where the Griffin might have come from, and how the Greeks learned about it and then put it in their artwork. So there's been Griffin creatures in different cultures around the world predating the Greeks. But the Greeks liked the Griffin and brought it with open arms and, along with a whole bunch of their other hybrid creatures. And each kind of scholar... What's interesting about Griffins in Greek literature, I guess, is that likely the very first mention of these Griffins in this story about the Arimaspians is kind of lost to time. And so all of these other authors mention this original source that we still have yet to find, which I think is very interesting, especially when you think about a big event like the burning of the Library of Alexandria. It's just very interesting to think that how much literature has been written in human history that has been lost to time. And it just makes you wish that we could go back in time and get it all down so we could read it, But that I found that interesting to know. Because of course each author who wrote about it after that original mention of Griffins kind of puts their own spin on it. Some of them mention that the Griffins are able to dig the gold ore up out of the rocks with their strong beaks and that they use it for their nesting. Some say that the local people, and this is from a source that said that Griffins were located in India, and said that the local people of the land would, sneak up around the Griffins, where they lived, and gather the bits of gold that were dropped by Griffins while they were flying over their, to and from their nests, gathering the gold for the material, and would collect it. And that, provided you didn't get in and bother the Griffins, like it was no big deal. The Griffins didn't necessarily think of it as a treasure that needed to be protected. It was just, they were very territorial, and if you got in their business, they would, not take kindly to that. They would protect themselves from what they perceived as a threat. So yeah, it's just interesting because for a long, long time, Griffins were considered real animals. I think some of these, I guess, mythology can be looked on as, ancient Greece's religion at the time. And so, probably a lot of people considered the stories to be true and the creatures in them real. But the Griffin was thought to be real up until, the Middle Ages, beyond ancient Greece. Something interesting about then is that people would it's kind of like dinosaur bones being thought to be dragon bones and used for medicinal purposes. Antelope antlers and horns would be called griffin talons, and people would ingest the griffin talons in order to gain, the strength of the griffin. And griffin eggs, which were probably just ostrich eggs, were also thought to be very valuable. And yeah, that was up until the Middle Ages. Something else interesting happened during the Middle Ages, and that is that the griffin kind of got adopted by the Christian church, which to me is very interesting because, I guess at the time they thought it was a real animal, but you think about the griffin being featured in the mythology and art of so many other religions and cultures, and here it is being, taken in by the Christian church. And the reason the Christian church adopted the griffin, and it can be seen in some carvings in cathedrals and such, is because they felt like the duality of the griffin, because it was a being that had both the aerial and the terrestrial. It mirrored the duality of Jesus Christ, who was both divine and mortal. And so that's why they felt that the griffin was a sign of Jesus. Just another example, of Christianity, for better or for worse, adopting, parts of local religions and other cultures and kind of absorbing it into itself. As far as, there is no specific famous griffin in Greek mythology, but there are some interesting griffins in other literature. And I specifically, when I was preparing for this video, only could think of one, and that was the griffin in Alice in Wonderland. I know a lot of you are big fans of Alice in Wonderland, so I probably don't need to tell you about this griffin, but there is a griffin in Wonderland who has an affiliation, it seems, with the Queen of Hearts and her court, because he can be found near the croquet game, and he's instructed by the Queen of Hearts to show Alice and introduce her to what can be presumed, I guess, to be called a friend of his. Definitely, it sounds like an old classmate of his. They have at least, been acquainted with each other a long time. But another creature who is called the mock turtle. And Alice, of course, very validly, in my opinion, asks, "What's a mock turtle?" And the queen, as if she were being foolish, says, "Well, it's what mock turtle soup is made out of." Which, okay, I guess that's an answer, but, it is Wonderland. And the griffin, who is rather, stodgy, they both kind of come off as older fellows, reflecting on their time in school, the mock turtle and the griffin, once they get over to the mock turtle. And he's certainly not mean, but he seems a little proud, a little haughty, and something interesting is that one could argue that the most popular version of Alice in Wonderland is the Disney movie. And if I'm talking to you about the Griffin and the Mock Turtle, and if I say the words lobster quadrille, if you only know the story from the movie, you might not recognize what I'm talking about. And that's because it got cut from the movie. I guess it was created and the characters were designed and everything, but it was cut from the movie, which I found very interesting. The Griffin has been found in a lot of other versions of Alice in Wonderland, though, other movie versions and other, TV versions and video games and that kind of thing. But he got cut from the Disney film. But that's the most famous Griffin that I remembered. So I just thought I would mention him because he's not one of the most popular characters from that story, I don't think, but he is in there. There's a griffin who draws a cart or a carriage in Dante's Inferno. There is, a griffin, well, a griffin is mentioned in Paradise Lost. So it is a creature who has, in heraldry and everything, become just kind of a staple of fantasy iconography. I would say, it's not necessarily on the tip of people's tongues like unicorn and dragon are, but once you get past, like unicorn, dragon, mermaid, I think after that, if you ask someone to name a mythological creature, they're going to say Griffon or hippogriff, for example, which, we can go into how there are other, very similar creatures like the hippogriff, which has the head and wings of an eagle, but the back half of a horse. Which, incidentally, was said to be born of the mating between a griffin and a mare. So, I guess that is topical. But, yeah, we don't have a lot of ancient Greek information about the griffin, but there is plenty to talk about. Something else that's kind of neat is one of the most famous griffin art pieces is found in Pisa, in Italy. It's called the Griffin of Pisa, but what's really interesting about it is that it has Islamic origin as well. It is this 3-foot tall brass sculpture of a griffin that he's actually very cute, I think. He's very round. He has tiny wings. And what's interesting about him is he's hollow. And so something people have wondered, well, he's a bit of an enigma and a mystery. No one's sure where his origin is, and no one's sure what his original purpose was. Some of these Islamic bronze animal sculptures were used as fountains, but he doesn't have the correct mechanism built in or residual markings of what these mechanisms would have to be. And so they don't think he was a fountain, but they think that what he might be is some kind of musical instrument that would have worked similar to a bagpipe, wherein he would be set up outside where the wind could blow into his backside through a sort of airbag or bladder and through a reed in his mouth, which would make the griffin roar or make this different music, which I think is really cool. You can look up the Griffin of Pisa. He's a pretty cool thing. Who knows, maybe I'll make a pattern out of that one day. But yeah, I think that's about all I wanted to tell you guys about the griffin. Definitely an iconic mythological creature, in my opinion, that doesn't get enough love, and was featured a lot in Greek mythology, even though he didn't have a specific story to be attributed to. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this. I'm going to see you in a month with the next creature. I will say, this was the last of our winged creatures, and so now we're going to move on to fully, well, for a while we're going to move on to fully terrestrial creatures. So I will be curious to know, who do you think will still be featured? We still have 8 more creatures to go. So hope you enjoy stitching your Griffon, and happy stitching, everybody. Thank you so much for all your support. Oh, one more thing. I got a new setup. I finally got a chair for my room, a nice folding chair that is going to be my new stitching chair, and I've got the camera set up to where, well, it's not in my lap anymore. So hopefully there's less bouncing and less wiggling, and we can, it will be a little more enjoyable to watch this time. But anyway, I think that's all that speaking of less bouncing, anyhow, I think that's all that I wanted to say. Thank you again for watching, and hope you're all doing well. It's a wild world out there. We're all just trying to get through it. Please be kind and love one another. All right. I'll see you next time. Bye.